Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host. I'm a filmmaker on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode, I pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on streaming. I pick a favourite film from that topic and battle it out against a guest to decide which film would become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 2. Hello, posters or potteries. If you prefer, we are back for part 2, where we are talking Darren Aronofsky films. And I didn't trip up on saying Darren Aronofsky films again, which is good. This is the part of the show where we have a look at your Instagram responses for the last podcast, which feels like a long time ago now. I know. I can't help but getting ill, okay? And obviously that podcast was on Superman films, which I think was very successful at the box office and critically acclaimed, apart from the TV mag that I follow, the film magazine that I follow. They only gave it 2 stars. You can figure out who they are, but they are generally very good. Anyway, the Meandering Movie podcast went with Superman 2. Take on the Academy went with the original from 1978, Superman the movie. Anton Kinelov, a regular responder, went with Man of Steel. Matt from the Matt and Mark movie show went with the Donner cut of Superman 2, which was Andrew Korn's choice on the podcast. The movie bonus said Batman v Superman, controversial, I know. Yeah, and I think that was it. I'm intrigued. Tommy, what is your Superman movie of choice for you, sir?
So I rewatched all the movies last month to get ready for the new one, but I'm going to go with the original 1978 Christopher Reeve Superman. It's just such a brilliant piece of casting, and even Marlon Brando reading off cue cards still works. So really fun movie, and I've already watched it twice this year, so it's fun.
Oh, wow, nice. Well, was it screening anywhere? Or?
First time was on my birthday when Gene Hackman died. I wanted to rent Royal Tenenbaums at a video store. They didn't have that out, so I was like, I watched Superman. And then last month when I was revisiting all the Superman movies.
Nice. So, as I said, we are talking Darren Aronofsky films because he's got a new movie out called Caught Stealing. What is your Aronofsky film for you, sir, Tommy?
So I picked Black Swan. Before we record this podcast this week, I've never seen a Darren Aronofsky movie before in my life. So this is a fun little deep dive on him with his 2 very fun movies.
Yeah.
But Black Swan I always heard was really great. I always knew of his reputation back in the day. And it's something I really wanted to check out because it sounded right up my alley of like a psychological horror drama about ballerinas. So this is a really fun time. It's about, Natalie Portman becoming the Black Swan, essentially. Doing Swan Lake, I think it was.
Yeah.
The name of the play. So really fun movie. So
were there any other films in contention for you that you fancied watching, or was it just Black Swan?
I was thinking of maybe like The Whale. I do love Brendan Fraser, but it maybe seemed a little too bleak, and one setting place was probably not great enough for a movie. So
yeah. Fair enough, yeah. So initial reactions for me when I first saw it, just a really interesting, again, like character study of a ballerina played brilliantly by Natalie Portman that won her only Oscar so far. Yeah, she's really incredible in it. I feel like, Darren Aronofsky kind of looks at kind of these very innocent type characters and really explores how they descend into their own obsessions and how do they come out of it, usually not positively. But certainly he went through a spell of making this one and The Wrestler as well, of looking at characters that are so dedicated to their art and how does that affect them, how far will they go to get their art right. With this, obviously a more upper class, more sort of refined art form that's only accessible to certain people, whereas like The Wrestler is kind of the opposite end of the scale of that, which is kind of interesting. I always feel like The Wrestler and Black Swan are a great like double bill to watch if you're maybe I should have picked The Wrestler. really kind of affecting. Again, I'll get into it, but really interestingly structured in the way the kind of the horror plays out with Portman's character of Nina. And again, very similar to Requiem of a Dream, there's a lot of things that you're seeing on screen that only this character is imagining and experiencing, whereas a lot of it turns out not to be real. So two very kind of similar films in that way. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, to be honest. And rewatching it for this, I forgot about a few moments in this where I was like, oh, completely forgot about that horrible scene. Okay. How about you, sir?
So, like I said, like I never saw this before. I'm really glad I did. It made me think of a more recent movie, Substance, in a way of like perfection and chasing, like, and how this movie has so many comments on age. I think that the casting of Winona Ryder was brilliant in this movie, especially where she was in her career at this moment. But I think that this is just a really tight psychological thriller, and really just the dangers of, like, not living your life and being too invested in something and trying to aim for perfection, which inevitably leads to disaster, and not having like a work-life balance or anything like that. I think that the direction of this movie is really strong in terms of like the psychological state of Natalie Portman, and I could see why this one heard the Oscar, Natalie Portman. So really great movie. And the score also I thought was fantastic, using like a very more classical score, my surround sound system. I was like, this is amazing. I love this.
Yeah. You basically went over the story of what happens already. Again, like a very simple thing of a ballerina trying to become the Swan Queen and how that affects her, basically. So directing, I liked the opening dancing scenes where, of course, the actual dancing is quite elegant, but the camera work feels very handheld. Not really shaky, but certainly deliberate to give you a certain kind of contrast when the dancer dressed in black arrives. With certain sound effects of breathing, it felt like the camera was portraying another character for a moment. But I think it's just to sort of build up this monster in black emerging. Plus, you get like a great shot of like the black swan's red eyes flashing before the dance quickens in pace. Yeah, the scene felt like a nice teaser for what's to come, and just throws you into the world of ballet right from the off in a great way for me.
Yeah, in terms of directing, I think that one of the standout moments was in this movie, just like a little bit descending into madness, but like the scene where Natalie Portman and Mila Kunis go out for drinks and stuff like that. And she finally just has to let loose for once in her life. And she takes like the cup full of ecstasy that she clearly sees Mila Kunis spiking her drink with. And then I like how it didn't like feel cliche in some movies, like the typical like comedy or something like that, where you see someone like take a hit of weed and all of a sudden it's like acid and it's like there's hallucinating or anything like that. Instead,
the screen is warping around and stuff.
Instead of just very good use of like colors and stuff like that, and just like a dynamic way of just like, okay, so Natalie Portman's finally learning how to let loose in a way. So
I feel like Darren Aronofsky, certainly in that one, especially as he's made something like Requiem for a Dream, all about, the effects of taking drugs. And, as we've discussed in part one, like incredibly creative stuff. And then in this, it's just like, okay, I've done that stuff in that film. But in this film, it's just going to be a bit more refined and a bit more kind of focused. And, this film doesn't necessarily need the crazy, but it's kind of done. The creativeness is just feels, it has this kind of elegant quality, even though there's some rough, hard edges here with some of it. It doesn't feel out of place with the world of ballet. Yeah, it's just kind of really interesting to see that, that nightclub scene as well, that you just have these red and green flashes that come up, and that's all you kind of have, really. Yeah, it's just some really interesting restraint from Aronofsky here in this film.
Yeah, in terms of like blocking in general too, with the dancing and everything like that, I think that this was excellently choreographed. I think obviously in a movie with like ballerinas, you have to make it realistic as possible. I mean, if the dancing didn't work, it wouldn't work whatsoever. But the final scene of this movie where like, she's performing the Black Swan, the final act, just really well choreographed. I thought it was just like amazing, performances, amazing dancing and stuff like that. You could see all the hard work that these characters pulled off in the world of the movie and stuff like that. And even how Natalie Portman, there's like little subtle moments where like she gets dropped at one point during the final scene of this movie.
And it is a moment where you're like, it's quite a shock, even though like her legs aren't snapping or anything like a swan leg. It's still quite you still get that same similar feeling of cringe. Well, it's more of a feeling of cringe, but that same level of emotion,
Yeah, and it's great that they immediately cut to the audience right there, so you can see just like the wide shot of like this packed theater and being like, oh my God, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So, and how she's able to play it off. I think that also there's just some great like little moments with like the one scene where Vincent Cassel is introducing Natalie Portman to like the gala, wherever it is, and how fragile Natalie Portman feels in that scene in terms of directing and stuff like that. And how at one point when Vincent Cassel announces Natalie Portman, like, okay, Nina Sayers.
Yeah.
And Mila Kunis just laughs, and how it hyper focuses on that, because it gets you right in the point of view of Natalie Portman, where this character is so fragile, so insecure, so not confident in themselves, that this one little thing, Mila Kunis probably didn't even intentionally mean to do that, her character.
Yeah.
But it just threw off Natalie Portman right there. She's like, well, I have to be more perfect then. If they think I'm a joke. This must be what they all think.
Yeah, Mila Kunis is great in this, because it feels like she's very much the clear like Black Swan choice in this dual role, and it's definitely put in the script that like this is what she needs to strive towards. She's the perfect white swan, but the whole film is kind of just about how is Portman gonna pull off the Black Swan? What has she got to do to get the Black Swan out of her? Yeah, and like with Kunis, like the Black Swan is very much there with her, but like there's no like white swan there at all. you know, so even though she's the alternate, I don't see any white innocent swan in that character. No offense, Mila Kunis, but so that was kind of really interesting to watch that kind of play out between those two characters. But I do like how the film kind of immerses you into the world of ballet, where the direction always feels very tight in on the characters, especially like Natalie Portman. Like you can see every emotion on her face. You don't miss anything. Plus, when they're like working on their ballet shoes, it's like they're tearing them apart before they put them on. There's a great little scene where she's like performing for Vincent Cassel's character, Thomas Leroy, to see if she'll be the lead of their new take on Swan Lake, to be the Swan Queen. The direction is very twirly, as you would expect, but when she's doing her spins as the Black Swan, the camera goes to Portman's like point of view, so the camera's like spinning really fast, really quickly before landing on Vincent Cassel as she's kind of spotting where she is. It lands on him a few times before Mila Kunis arrives and distracts her, and the shot's kind of all messed up, like her twirl is all messed up. Plus, like the sound design is really detailed too here, where she's like practicing in her own room at home, and you can hear her toenail crack, and it looks when she looks at it, it's all bloody. So the attention to detail in experiencing what Natalie Portman is experiencing is really well focused here. Really great. Because normally you wouldn't hear like a nail crack, and make that work in the sound mix. Whereas here, like they somehow pull it off.
Aronofsky does a great job of like showing like how painful and like backbreaking this type of performance is, and like wanting to strive to be the best. And I love how like in many of the scenes where Natalie Portman was dancing, how many times it's just a close up on her, just showing her emotion, showing like her, how she's feeling in the moment, and like how like insecure she is. And then there's like little moments where Natalie Portman's getting the massage from like the trainer or whatever it is, and you can just feel, even in terms of like character and stuff like that, how tight the character feels and how like they don't feel loose whatsoever. It really brings back to like a whole metaphor of the whole character and stuff, where they're so tightly wound that they can't let loose, they can't be free or anything like that. They can't do the thing that is required for like the Black Swan, which eats up this character inside.
I really liked all the kind of the tiny details Darren Aronofsky puts in the film too, like kind of the little details that are signifiers that she is kind of losing her mind a bit. Like on the subway, well, I don't know if this is true, but I don't live in America, but on the subway you always hear like birds flapping. I imagine birds wouldn't be flapping on the subway.
As someone that's been in New York City a lot, no, that does not happen.
But you definitely hear them.
Yeah.
When Portman goes home at one point and sees her like mum's painting, and one of the paintings, like the eyes move very quickly. Then during, like, as we said, the nightclub scene, which is great, where you have basically like these really quick freeze frames of Nina and Lily dancing in green and red light. And literally, like, blink and you miss it, you can see Nina with her Black Swan makeup on. It's literally a split second. I don't know if you noticed that, but yeah, I just really liked all these little details and these clues, in a way, that Aronofsky includes in here. I thought was really great. Just great for rewatch value as well, in general.
I'm sure this will definitely hold up on rewatch, but in terms of like the psychological state, I love how many at times there's like a quick cut of all of a sudden Mila Kunis's face is Barbara Hershey's face, Natalie Portman's mom, and stuff like that, where like immediately it's like, wait, what's going on right here? It just really makes you disoriented in the way that Natalie Portman feels in this moment, where she's just losing her mind. And even in terms of shots, I just love the one part of like the paintings or like pictures in her apartment coming to life and yelling at her and stuff like that. Just really great trippy stuff. Again, almost like a Nightmare on Elm Street moment. As we go back to it. Yeah.
I feel like Wes Craven was a huge influence on Darren Aronofsky for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The only thing with the face swapping thing, I think generally it works really well, apart from one time where I was like, I have no idea what face this is. When I think it's during that sex scene between Nina and Lily, and there's a point where Mila Kunis's face, I assume, changes to Natalie Portman, but it did not look like her. I just think the CG didn't quite work in that moment. But yeah, that was quite disorientating. I was like, was that Natalie Portman? Because it definitely didn't look like her in that moment.
I definitely think it works better in scenes where it's not as brightly lit as that scene is.
Yeah.
So once they're able to obscure a little bit more, it's better. Like in the scene in the dressing room when like she stabs like Mila Kunis and stuff like that. And the one point it cuts if I remember correctly, there was a cut too right there where it cuts like Natalie Portman's face. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah. So on the whole, I think it works, all the face swapping stuff, but that one was a bit dodge for me. So favorite scene for me, I guess a collection of scenes, but I'm counting it as all one sequence. But I love the last trippy like horror sequence where it gets very gnarly at times, which you certainly don't expect, and definitely goes into body horror territory, even though it's all in her head. And it's quite a long extended sequence where you have her reflection like not following her, which is quite a standard thing in terms of like someone losing their mind in cinema when she's getting like her costume fitted. But then she sees like Thomas Leroy shagging Lily, and her face turns into Nina's face, while Leroy then turns into the black monster thing from the start, which wasn't that scary, I don't think, but I think it's the fact that he sounds like a swan while having sex that makes it kind of crazy to watch. Then the horror really turns up a huge notch for me when she goes to visit Winona Ryder to give back all her stuff, and she's like, "Oh, you stole all my stuff." And then she literally starts stabbing herself in the face in the hospital. That was a huge shock. That was the scene that I referenced where I did not remember this happening. Then, of course, her face turns into Nina's face and is still stabbing. That was quite horrible to watch. Then when she gets home, you get the classic scene of turning the lights on and off and finds like a bloody old woman, which looks like Nina again, but kind of difficult to see if it was actually her, but I assume it was. Then you have like all of her like mother's portraits moving and shouting at her, which I thought tonally didn't work as well within the scene. But then like the sequence brings it back well when like Nina breaks her mother's fingers in the door, where I definitely winced, and she pulls a feather out of her back. Then I winced even more when her legs snapped back like a swan's leg to make it look like a swan's leg. So I love how long the sequence is, and when it comes, the body horror hits hard, especially that face stabbing, very gnarly. I just love this kind of feeling that in this long sequence that you don't really know when it's going to end.
Yeah. I love how this movie like kind of leans into body horror for a little bit. in a way that's like not really explained. I mean, this isn't like a movie like The Substance where it's like, oh, she literally is metaphoric, like turned into a black swan. I think that's more so just like in her head, she's just going crazy and stuff like that. So she's inhabiting the character more and more. So I thought it was a really good touch.
Yeah, what was your favorite pieces of body horror in this?
Definitely like seeing like her toes that like take her toes, and her toes are all webbed together.
Oh yeah,
like that. Where it's like, oh my god, what the hell?
Yeah, great makeup there.
Yeah.
Favorite scene or shot for you, Tommy?
I think in general, my favorite scene is the scene where Natalie Portman gets introduced to the crowd with Vincent Cassel, and how I think the different like blocking and like different cutting to like the different characters is so clever in this moment where like you can see, first of all, from like Winona Ryder's point of view, where she's watching this go down and keeps on cutting to her, and how she's just getting disgusted more and more and more and just getting like heartbroken that this is happening to her, and like otherwise she's like, why am I getting taken out? And like that little moment I touched upon earlier where it cuts to Mila Kunis laughing, and how that clearly you could tell upsets and irks Natalie Portman, and Natalie Portman is just like a fragile little flower in this moment that like is still not used to the world of like high society in a way. She's more been in the background, I feel like, in this company.
You feel like in that moment she's not really part of them yet. It feels like she's got a lot of work to do to really fit in properly. Because obviously on that staircase she doesn't really say anything. She's just presented like an object that this is the new Swan Queen, you know. Yeah, in a way it's kind of sort of, it's very formal but almost kind of absurd at the same time.
Yeah.
So directing score for me, yeah, I really liked it. I think, you know, with Requiem for a Dream, like I scored a 9, but I think there is an element that it is a little bit rough around the edges, but I obviously really appreciated how insane it is. This one certainly feels a lot more refined, and it just looks great. And it, you know, your expectations of what ballet is, you know, the fact that it's all kind of very elegant and beautiful, it's not that all the time. It can be quite cutthroat and sort of down and dirty and sweaty, and you know, the hard work that goes into performing these ballet shows is quite extraordinary to watch. Like the amount of shots that you see, like these ballerinas on like walking on their toes, it just gives you this kind of uneasy feeling. I'm just like, that's got to fucking hurt. You know, the amount of shots that you see that is quite unsettling. You know, I'm not a feet person. I'm really not. So that's that was uncomfortable. But yeah, there's definitely a sense of more of a refined quality to Aronofsky's direction here. And when it does get visually creative, it feels of a piece to the tone of ballet. So yeah, this is so hard. Do I go? I think I'll go a little bit lower because I feel like it could have. Yes, I respect the refined nature of it, but I feel like it could have gone sort of. They could have pushed the boundaries a little bit at the end, even though there's that fantastic horror sequence which I loved. But when you compare it to Requiem for a Dream, I feel like there could have been more. Maybe I'm being really harsh here, but when you're comparing the two, that's just my feeling in this moment. So I'll go like an 8.8 for me. Am I being harsh?
Maybe a little bit, but 8.8 is still a good score. It's not like it's bad.
What do you reckon then?
Yeah, it is interesting watching Requiem and Black Swan back to back because I feel like with Black Swan, you can definitely see in a way that Darren Aronofsky has leveled up as a filmmaker, because this comes about 10 years later, I believe, if I'm not incorrect. And you just see in the moment of like how, like, you know, with bigger sets and stuff like that, and how much greater control he has of like the actors and stuff like that. And even like the subtle blocking of like Natalie Portman in the club scene, like before she takes the drugs, and how you can tell they see like how in terms of performance, in terms of like blocking too, of how she just seems very alone and very just like uncomfortable in that setting. They really do it well. I think that he has a great sense of point of view in this movie, in terms of like, you know, the scene I was talking about before, where like they introduce her, and even the horror in this movie is really hits when it hits. I think it's great psychological horror where like gets in the mindset where you're freaking out, and like the scenes of like almost like dream lucid like states of like Natalie Portman where she's not sure what's going on. She's in her apartment freaking out, and like characters' faces are being swapped and stuff like that, and the portraits are coming alive. And even towards the end, when you have the huge set piece of like, you finally get to see Swan Lake be performed, and it's stunning. It's amazing. It looks incredible. So if I'm not correct, I think I gave it a 9.3 for Requiem for a Dream for directing.
9.2.
So 9.2. So I'm going to go a little bit higher. I'm going to go like a 9.4 for this. I think that you definitely see some improvements with Darren Aronofsky's filmmaking right here, and his control of filmmaking and control of even bigger budget and stuff like that. And it doesn't really, you still see the personality coming through of the director.
Yeah, I think for me, as you're sort of comparing it to like The Substance, like The Substance, it just kind of goes up a notch. And even throughout a lot of that film, like there's some really refined moments in there, but there's some really like, I know very different films, but that at the end of The Substance just goes to 11 and then some. It's kind of insane. Whereas I feel like, yes, you are trying to keep a certain amount of a certain tone within the ballet stuff here, but yeah, I feel like it could have pushed it a little bit further. I don't know, but yeah, that's my thinking there. So screenplay then, Nina and her mother Erica, their relationship kind of reminded me a lot of Carrie's relationship to her mother in the Brian De Palma film Carrie. Like both, Nina and Carrie are very innocent characters, very controlling mothers. Carrie is certainly a virgin in that film, and there's speculation that a very strong possibility that Nina is a virgin in this movie as well. And Erica helps Nina, and there's a scene where she helps Nina undress and cut her nails to stop scratching herself because she thinks the stress of being like the Swan Queen is too much for Nina. But at the same time, she's very like proud of her for getting the part. Certainly Carrie's mother is more of an extreme character, but you feel like Erica is sort of the precursor of Carrie's mother, Margaret, in her controlling nature. I think that's fair to say.
It's definitely like a dance mom type thing.
Yeah. And the way she sort of paints those awful portraits, to let her emotions out, I guess, is a very strange and unnerving kind of part of her characteristic. Yeah, she's very much an oddball character, but sort of very subtly done. Yeah, really interesting relationship they have.
I think in many ways the script is brilliant in this movie, but I think that it really portrays this as like a almost like coming of age type tale, which is interesting because Natalie Portman's character is supposed to be, I think she's like 26 or 27 when the time she makes this. So she's a character in her late 20s who really has never lived a life other than ballerina, the world ballet and everything like that, and taken through her mom, and the fact that like, she's a character who, in her late 20s is still living at home and stuff like that, but like under a controlling mom who like clearly is like doling out everything that she needs to do and stuff like that. Is very harsh, very strict, won't let her live, is like freaking out by the fact that like in terms of script, when she's going out to the nightclub and she gets so many calls from her mom over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Like it's like a helicopter parent, but it's like your kid isn't like a teenager anymore, isn't even like a little kid. They are an adult, fully formed adult. But the way the script and the performances is, you don't really get that sense that she's ever really had any sort of childhood. I feel like it was probably just go, 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 go. And the way it's contrasted with Mila Kunis, who like seems very much more loose, very much like, oh, this is fun. We're doing ballet. It's cool. It's whatever.
Yeah.
Like she's definitely well trained and she's definitely like a great ballerina, but it doesn't consume her life. She's able to have like essentially work-life balance, where she's able to do other stuff in her life. And the contrasting nature of both of them, I think, is really cleverly portrayed throughout the movie and the script.
Yeah, definitely. As I said, like Kunis is definitely the obvious choice for the Black Swan, but Natalie Portman is clearly the best choice for the White Swan. And it's, the whole film is just about like, at what point will the Black Swan come out of Nina? And it's just really interesting structured and with Nina's like slow transformation into the Black Swan, I thought was quite interestingly timed in a way, even though it becomes increasingly clear and arguably predictable throughout the film that she's going to turn into the Black Swan, so to speak, when she actually performs it at the end. I think that's fair to say. But even with this structure, I admire sort of the restraint in holding back the full transformation physically and emotionally. Because I think in other hands, in a lesser filmmaker, maybe the Black Swan qualities that this part is looking for physically and emotionally maybe would have happened a lot earlier, and we would have seen more of how this new character affects people like Thomas, Leroy, and Nina before the show starts, like a few scenes of that before it starts. Whereas this, it's very much when she thinks she kills Lily, Mila Kunis, that I think she does change into the Black Swan. So it's just a really interesting choice of when they decide to make that transformation kind of psychologically happen for her, because I don't think there's no like clear point, but I think it's, for me, but it definitely feels like it's just at the end, even though it feels like a natural place to put it, and other filmmakers maybe would have played with that a little bit more. But Aronofsky, just because it's such an internal performance, such a focused film on this character, it kind of makes sense to transform her into the Black Swan when it's needed at showtime, at curtain up, even though it feels predictable to do it like that anyway. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah. So this movie with the script, obviously Natalie Portman's the point of view character for us, and she is very much an unreliable narrator. So there was a certain point, this is my first watch of this movie, where I was wondering for a little bit if it was going to be like a reveal if Mila Kunis didn't even exist, if it was like a figment of her imagination. I think that they definitely hint at that a little bit sometimes. I think I end up on the side of like Mila Kunis was real, but she obviously didn't have sex with her. And she obviously didn't kill her at the end. But I think there's like a little bit of thing where like it kind of makes you uneasy where you're not even sure at some points, where like maybe this is just an imagination of like competition coming through, and like this person is the exact opposite of her in every way. You could see a way of her just imagining the competition.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like there's no, even though you don't see it so much, but there's no like, I mean, there's such chalk and cheese characters as you mentioned, Tommy, but there's not a huge sense that neither character is better at ballet than the other. I feel like they're both equally capable of performing this role as the Swan Queen. I mean, she Mila Kunis, Lily, is the alternate, and before, within 5 minutes before they're supposed to go on, she was supposed to perform it before Nina arrives. So I don't think there's any speculation that the film tells you that there's no difference in the quality of their dancing. Maybe the film doesn't really need that. It doesn't need to focus on that necessarily. It's not really important, I guess. But it's just really interesting seeing those two characters play off each other.
Yeah. There's one scene I definitely want to highlight. We talked a little bit about it with, the club scene, and we talked about like, the ecstasy and stuff like that. But there's one moment I really want to highlight that.
Yeah.
Throughout this movie, Natalie Portman's pretty much like killing herself to be perfected and be like the ultimate ballerina and everything like that, and within this world. And then they go out to the club. They meet a young Sebastian Stan, which is great little performance. I was like, oh, cool. But I love that in the contrast in how like this whole world for Natalie Portman is so important. It's like everything about her life consumes her life. And she talks to Sebastian Stan about it and like what the ballet is. And he's like, oh, I never heard of that. Oh, and I don't know. It doesn't sound like anything. It doesn't sound, and like Sebastian Stan's friends like, ballet seems like boring, whatever. It's not really for me and everything like that. And it really kind of shows that like sometimes like people, when they aim for perfectionism within their own little thing, that they don't even realize that like this is very much like a niche thing. This is very much like you're putting this up to a pedestal of where there's some people that aren't even going to notice what you are or think of what you are. And basically, is it worth it to kill yourself over something like this, where some people, it's not going to be for them or not even going to be within their world? It does make me think sometimes on like a lesser scale of like, with my day job, for example, I'll talk about movies and stuff like that. My coworkers will be like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, oh, you didn't watch the baseball game last night? Like, no, I was watching like 10 movies over the last 2 weeks.
Like,
kind of like that.
I've
like,
not heard of those.
yeah, like I have a movie podcast, and it's just like we're all in our own little worlds in a way.
Yeah.
It was highlighting this movie.
I mean, that's happened so many times with me. I was like, oh yeah, I'm watching this film for this podcast. I'm like, yeah, never heard of it, never seen it. I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah, it's like, all right, I get it.
But yeah, you're right. It's so kind of fascinating, that little scene, because she reacts, doesn't she? She says like, oh, when he says, oh, it's kind of boring, and she's like, no, it's not, or something. Yeah. And it's like, I feel like she doesn't really realize how niche of a art form ballet is, and that it's basically being performed. She's doing all this incredible hard work that basically kills herself in the end for people that she doesn't really fully understand and fully, we don't really get to know sort of the type of people that actually watch ballet in a way, other than people like Thomas Leroy. I know he's kind of the director of it, and you certainly have that scene, as you say, when Leroy is presenting Nina to everyone. That's the audience, that's the people with all the money that they have to please to actually put on this show. So it's interesting that there is a bit of a separation there between this kind of incredibly tough and precise art form, that they're doing it for people that are just seen to have a shit ton of money, and that's it, really. That she's doing it for kind of faceless people that she doesn't really know, and not the ordinary human being that she sees on the street, on the subway every morning, Yeah. So, yeah, that's really interesting.
And it's also like the Winona Ryder character kind of shows like a path for like, this is eventually going to be Natalie Portman's future in this movie. Like, even if Natalie Portman, the ending didn't happen, I'm still not 100% sure if she died or not in the ending. But even if she lived, let's say, and like 100% definitely she lived, there's going to be eventually a point where she's had her time in the sun, and then she gets retired and replaced by the new young thing. And it's a really good metaphor for Hollywood in general. I think that casting Winona Ryder definitely helps within that metaphor too, because people forget. I mean, Winona Ryder now, she's like back and famous because of Stranger Things, but at that point in 2010, she was a star fading, very much fading. Like, she had that whole shoplifting thing. At this point in Winona Ryder's career, the year before, her big role was Spock's mom in the Star Trek reboot, which is like, she maybe had a few lines. And at this moment in her career, like a couple years after, like the role she was getting was like Jason Statham's wife in Homefront, where she wasn't even advertised in the movie. Like, that's how bad her career was. Whereas, like, we all know her as like the it girl of the 90s and stuff like that. So it's just like, almost like in a way where it's just like this, the Fleet of Fame is very, very like brief and stuff like that. And there's only so much you can do, and you can't escape time. And Natalie Portman, eventually you're going to end up discarded like Winona Ryder's character was.
Funny and interesting lines. There's quite a few. I've got quite a few naughty ones. A minute more of ass kicking. I'll be back. Wait for me here. All right. During that kind of fundraising scene. And I think during the nightclub as well, I think someone says, did you suck his cock? Not all of us have to. Deep burn. Oh, I think that was Lily to Nina. And I've got Leroy to Natalie Portman. I got a little homework assignment for you. Go home and touch yourself. Live a little. All very sexual stuff in this film. And also, again, it's all trying to tease out the Black Swan in Nina from what Leroy is saying, but it's all the best lines. And he says later, when they're kind of rehearsing with David, the male dancer, and he says, David, can I ask you a question? Honestly, would you fuck that girl? And he does sort of this kind of wry smile of like, no.
Yeah.
But the weirdest one, which you could either read as super dirty or just kind of really cheesy, pardon the pun, from Mila Kunis when they're sort of being hit on by the waiter at the club.
Oh, yeah.
And he says, have you got enough cheese? No, but you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just found that hilarious. Have you got any good lines to share, Tommy?
Definitely, like the honestly, would you fuck that girl? I thought it was hilarious. Leroy would instantly be canceled as a Bowery director. I can't imagine that would fly over well.
No.
I do like Nina describing the Swan Lake to Sebastian Stan and his friend, where it's like, it's about a girl who gets turned to a swan and she needs love to break the spell, but her prince falls for the wrong girl, so she kills herself. And Sebastian Stan's like, what? That's heavy.
Sounds chance for ballet.
Yeah. Oh, God, I wish I knew the exact line when Mila Kunis finds out that like Natalie Portman had like a dream about her. He's like, "Oh, you had a little Leslie dream about me. Was I good?"
Oh yeah, yeah, that was funny. Screenplay then score for me. Again, this is really tough to like nail down a score because it's very much a character study. I just think the relationship she has with Nina has with her mother and with Lily, Mila Kunis' character is just really, really great of how the contrast is portrayed in the movie, and even her relationship with Leroy, who is frankly abusive to her as well. Certainly, if you watch it today, there's no doubt, of course. So yeah, it's just really interesting. It definitely feels more refined and more subtle in the descent of her darkness, but in a way, it's more interesting because in her mind, this is what she wants. This is what Nina wants. She wants to find her darker side, but in doing that, she ends up killing herself. And for me, I think she definitely does die at the end. And yeah, it's just quite an extraordinary kind of performance that she's going through hell, but she wants to. This is what she needs to do in her own eyes to reach perfection in her art, to reach perfection in her life, is ultimately to die on stage, which is what she does, to find that perfection within this story of Swan Lake, even though she is kind of losing her mind with it and she's alienating people around her like her mother and everyone else. So yeah, I think screenplay wise, I think it is better than Requiem for a Dream, because I think with Requiem for a Dream, there's just it kind of gives you these slivers of hope that these characters maybe can get out of these situations, but they're only like really tiny slivers. And the majority of your thinking with the characters in Requiem for a Dream is that it's just going to get darker and darker and get really fucked up. And that feeling of hope for these characters in that last 20 minutes, it's just all gone away. But with here in Black Swan, you kind of want her to really open up and become the Black Swan and perform this role in an incredible way in some ways, even though she's really suffering for it. And that you feel like there could be a point where she can get herself back on her feet with this ballet company and just say, yeah, you did an incredible job. And there could be a point where her, Mila Kunis and Thomas Leroy will gather around her and help her recover, even though they're both sort of trying to help her become the Black Swan, even though it's really not doing her any good psychologically, and she ends up taking it too far with her perfection and ultimately killing herself. So I just feel like the emotions that this film is going with are really complex, more complex than they are in Requiem. So yeah, I think it's really impressive from a screenplay point of view in its emotional complexities. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 9.3 for me. I think the screenplay, even though it's very much a character study, there's a lot going on here psychologically. So I think 9.3, yeah, it's really impressive actually when you really look at it in detail.
I'm going to echo your sentiments. I think this screenplay is just really clever. Sometimes in psychological thrillers or dramas, it can be a little frustrating or be like, what the fuck did I just watch or something like that? Or they don't dole it out cleverly where it's like a late act reveal twist that kind of derails the whole movie. And this movie doesn't really do that. And even like the twist that she didn't kill Mila Kunis doesn't feel like a what the fuck is this bullshit type of thing. I think that there's so much just great little character moments of Natalie Portman in this movie. Like in the beginning of the movie where Vincent Cassel asks her like straight up, like, have you ever had sex before? And she's like, yeah, I have. And I feel like she lied right there.
Yeah.
I feel like she never had it, but they don't outright spell it for you, and it's one thing that like makes you wonder, like, what's really behind this character. Has this character ever let loose? And even like moments of like, when she finally touches herself and stuff like that, it feels like she's never really gotten to the point where she's just let loose whatsoever. And it's the first time she's ever really explored herself, and because she's been strictly adhering to the ballet things. I think that there's also just some great clever metaphors for the entertainment industry as a whole, of how like this is a very fleeting moment, how you'll be discarded by the next new thing. Because Vincent Cassell, he mentions at one point that Winona Ryder was in his first production when he was probably a nobody and she was the star at this point, and then how quickly that overturns, and how now like she's the discarded person. And
there's definitely a lot of like emotional abuse things going on here, with certainly when you find out that he kind of just lets go of Ryder's character. And when you see the things that Thomas Leroy is doing to Nina, you're like, that is deeply unprofessional. And just the way that he calls Winona Ryder's character his little princess, and it's just like, what? That is messed up. And I think even Mila Kunis highlights that as well, and tells that to Nina, that this is messed up. He shouldn't be calling you that as his new princess or whatever. And she just shrugs it off like, it's nothing. But yeah, there is an element of emotional abuse in sort of, not necessarily grooming, but it doesn't go that far. But like, there's a very strong element that he's going about trying to bring out the Black Swan in Nina in completely the wrong way. Certainly that you wouldn't do now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But yeah, no, overall, like, I think that this moment just this screenplay just has great little moments peppered in, like a highlight before at the club scene, how you can be such a perfectionist in your one industry, but this is just some niche bullshit to another person, for all you know. So I think that a great sense of character, and I think that great sense of contrast in Natalie Portman and Mila Kunis, where like there's a certain point with like everything where like you gotta have fun or whatever. You gotta like have some sort of work-life balance. You have to like, if you take things way too seriously, way too like refined, you're gonna lose yourself. You're gonna lose your mind in a way. And there's definitely a limit to that, which Mila Kunis contrasts, but really clever. I think this is better than Requiem for a Dream script slightly. I gave that, I believe, 8.8.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go like a 9.1. So a little bit better.
Right. Acting then. Winona Ryder is a great drunk, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's great in the hospital as well when she's stabbing herself. Very, very convincing for me. Yeah, definitely during that party scene, when she's definitely had a few too many, she's fantastic. Definitely brings a great kind of levity to the film as well, in a way. Even though it's not a great moment for her.
Yeah. She's just a fun little performance right there. I think that, like I said before, casting her was just a brilliant move because it really sets home the message. If there's like a different actress in this career who's like, I don't know, let's say if it was like Julia Roberts in a role or something,
yeah,
it wouldn't work because it would like be like, well, she's still a star.
Yeah.
Winona Ryder was definitely waning, even though she had her second career come back like 5 years later of Stranger Things. This is before it, so she really is that character. She is Beth. She is the person who's gotten discarded by Hollywood.
Yeah. Barbara Hershey as Erica Sayers is fantastic as Nina's overprotective, unhinged mother. There's a great little scene where she sort of congratulates Nina on getting the part with baking her a cake, and Nina doesn't want any of it. And then immediately it's like, okay, fine, and tries to throw it in the bin before Nina apologizes. It's just a little moment, but it's just the way she kind of turns so quickly against Nina, like she's done something terrible. It's just such a great subtle performance in the beginning from Barbara Hershey that, she's done all this effort to make this cake and she doesn't want to eat it. Any other person would be like, oh, okay, that's fine. Yeah, just have it after the show or whatever when she is allowed to eat. Because obviously I imagine she has to keep her weight down or whatever. But the fact that she just gets very upset very quickly is quite unnerving in a way. Really great performance from her to begin with. And it just moves on from then. And yeah, you definitely get Carrie's mum vibes.
Yeah, there is a moment of Barbara Hershey, like you said, with that, where like there's something with abusive parents, where like you're waiting for another pin to drop, and where you're always walking around eggshells, and you can definitely tell up now, like she's waiting for like another moment for her mom to just break out and like be abusive and like shout at her or make her feel like shit, to the point that like you think that she never was able really to live because of Barbara Hershey. Because Barbara Hershey, I'm sure multiple times, we've only seen him once in this movie, but I'm sure throughout Nina's life, Barbara Hershey was like, "Don't forget that I had you at 28 and had to retire early because of you."
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure that was a constant refrain that she constantly heard.
Yeah,
and it definitely like hits home when like they have the moment where like no privacy whatsoever. She has to put like the log in front of her door, so Natalie Portman cannot break in whatsoever. And like you definitely feel like that's something that, like she's been building up to, she's been wanting to do forever and ever.
Yeah.
So at first, with Barbara Hershey, because I was trying to watch this without my phone whatsoever, and when I paused it for like a brief bathroom break, I looked up, I was like, "Is that Gina Davis?" Because I was convinced it was Gina Davis for a bit.
Right. Really?
They do look a little similar, but I think Barbara Hershey, regardless, that was really good in the domineering mother role. Awesome performance.
Absolutely. I really liked Vincent Cassel in this film as Thomas Leroy, the director of the ballet company. He's very much the alpha male, and no one really defies him throughout the entire film. And I find it interesting and kind of funny in a way that he cast Nina as the Swan Queen because she bit his lip when they were kissing. But he's basically trying to find this spark from Nina for the Black Swan for most of the film. Like, he's frankly not convinced, even when he's basically got his tongue down her throat. Then after that relentless kind of horror sequence with Nina arrives late before the big performance and says, "No, I'm doing it, not Lily." And there's this little smile from Vincent Cassel that we've never seen. And right there, he's convinced she can do it. So again, another like really sort of subtle performance in this film, which I really enjoyed. Yeah, because throughout a lot of the film, he's not, he's chosen Nina to be the Swan Queen, but it feels like it's a big risk that she can actually pull off. Can she actually pull off the Black Swan? And in that little subtle performance with that smile from Vincent Cassel, it really showed me that, oh yeah, he's convinced now. So really great from him.
Yeah, I think that there's a certain point with the directors in general where like you're a little bit of like a cult leader, and I think Vincent Cassel definitely brings that home in this movie. That like I think the whole company is like hanging on his every word and everything like that, and he's very captivating. He's very charming in like a weird way, like very like sleazy way, where you can see though why everyone in this ballerina company just like loves this guy and like hangs on his every word. And even in the creepy moments, he still comes off as like slightly charming. And one performance thing that I thought was amazing was the moment where he seduces Natalie Portman. And as sleazy as it is, when you see Natalie Portman's reaction right after, where like she wants to let loose, she wants to like let go, and in that moment, she's ready to just submit herself to Vincent Cassel, essentially like become a part of the cult. And it's like, nope, this is why you're not the Black Swan. that's what seducing is. And it's just such a shitty heel turn in a way where it's like, oh, dude, really? What the fuck?
The last sequence really showcases Natalie Portman's acting talent for me, where she effectively kills off her innocence when she thinks she's kills off Lily. That's the first time she really loses herself for me. Of course, what Thomas Leroy has been telling her this whole time. I love this little sequence where she has this realization moment where she thinks she's killed Lily and her breathing is really heavy and uncontrollable. And then she slowly but surely controls it. And in that moment, she becomes the Black Swan for me. Then when she dances as the Black Swan on stage, she has this amazing, like, piercing eyes at one moment, probably done with a little bit of visual effects, but I don't think they needed to do much to highlight those eyes. Then towards the end, when she realizes she stabbed herself, she becomes the Nina we kind of know, but almost content with what's happening. Like, she catches the eye of her mother in the audience, and she's genuinely in a moment of dancing euphoria, like the best version of herself, but she happens to be dying. And it's just an incredibly well judged performance by Natalie Portman. Yeah, I don't know who the other Oscar contenders were that year, but well deserved for me after the rewatch.
that Oscar year was, this is 2011. This is the infamous James Franco and Anne Hathaway Oscars.
Oh God.
Where James Franco was like clearly like stoned out of his mind, and Anne Hathaway was trying to bring that peppy theater kid energy into it, and it was not mixing whatsoever. But this is the year of when the other nominees were Annette Bening's All Right, Nicole Kidman, Rabbit Hole, Jennifer Lawrence in Winter's Bone, which is her breakout, and then Michelle Williams for Blue Valentine. So I think Natalie Portman well-deserved Oscar. So it's shocking she hasn't had another one since.
Yeah, definitely. Silly question, favorite performance?
Definitely Natalie Portman. She's the star of this. I think Mila Kunis is also really great contrasting. This is at a brief moment in time when we wanted Mila Kunis to be a movie star. It didn't really fully pan out because unfortunately Jupiter Ascending happened. But I think this is definitely her best role she's ever been in. You know, I love that 70s show. That I think that Mila Kunis is just really highlights of like, this is what your life could be. Your life does not need to be held back by what you do. You could still have a life and still be an expert in your craft. You don't have to be 100% only this whatsoever. There's something with work-life balance in general where Natalie Portman was eventually probably going to burn herself out, which she essentially did in this movie because she killed herself. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think second favorite for me would probably be Vincent Cassel and then Mila Kunis. But not to say Mila Kunis is bad, just I probably just favor Vincent Cassel. Yeah, overall, really, really great performances. Acting score for me, again, like really impressive. I don't think there's any weak link here, like with Requiem for a Dream. I just think Jared Leto doesn't necessarily like let the side down, but just he's just not on the level of everyone else, in my opinion. Whereas here, like Natalie Portman is on kind of Ellen Bernstein's level. I'll probably rank, I don't know, they're both very good in both these movies. I don't want to like judge. That's too harsh to judge like who's better, I think. But I think with everyone else, everyone does an outstanding job. So I gave a 9 for Requiem. So with that logic, I will probably go like a 9.2 for Black Swan for acting. How about you, sir?
So I think Black Swan, like you said, there's not really one weak link. The only weak link I can think of is Veronica, but she's such a minor character. That's just a one-note character. Right, it's just like jealous, whatever. It's just not that big of a deal. It doesn't drag it down. Yeah. Even like when you have little moments like Sebastian Stan playing the coolest guy, that was really fun. But Natalie Portman, it's a tour de force the performance. I mean, I know that she used the body double for some of her scenes for dancing. Apparently, when it's close up, it's more Natalie Portman, but when it's like full body, it's, I forget her name off the top of my head, but some classically trained ballerina. And Natalie Portman, though, put in like, I don't know, like 2 years in like ballet just to get ready for this role.
Wow. Yeah.
And it really pays off. So, but her, Kunis and Vincent Cassel is like the sleazy kind of sexual craze art director. Really fun. I think that Requiem for a Dream probably had higher highs for me in terms of performances. So I'm going to go, I'm trying to think, what did I give Requiem? I gave like a
9.3.
So I'm going to go a little bit less, like a 9.1 for this. So.
Okay, interesting. This is going to be a tight one, but I think I know what's going to win. Right, let's add up the scores then for Black Swan. Black Swan gets a very, very impressive 54.9. Exactly 1 point more than Requiem for a Dream. So Tommy's streak continues to 4-0. Well done, Spur.
Nice.
So you are now officially at the top of the league of podcasts, ahead of the Matt and Mark movie show. So I'm sure he'll be a bit annoyed, and be raring to go and choose his choice wisely when his episode comes up. Yeah. So next episode, as One Battle After Another is out, the new Paul Thomas Anderson film is out. Very excited for that one. We'll be talking Leonardo DiCaprio films. We have done a PTA podcast in the past, way back when, which I think was Phantom Thread versus There Will Be Blood. I think still There Will Be Blood is our highest rated film that we've ever covered on the podcast, I think, still. Yeah, and I'll have a guest, Liz, from Liz and a Movie podcast, which will be great. Tommy, you have been incredible as always. Really great hearing your insights on movies. No different here. Tell us about your podcast and where can we find you, sir?
Yeah, so again, I haven't seen as in like a movie scene, like the old game. But you can find us on social media at SeenItPod. That's on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're also on Blue Sky. That's podscene.bluesky.social. Our podcast is every week we cover a movie that me or my host Timmy has never seen before. So we just did an episode on Small Soldiers. Next month, we have a ton of great movies coming up. We're doing After Hours. We're doing There'll Be Blood. We're doing Dog Day Afternoon. So September is going to be great. I've never seen Dog Day Afternoon or There Will Be Blood, so I'm very excited.
Wow. Yeah, There Will Be Blood is incredible.
Yeah.
It's insane. You won't want to eat, you won't want to drink milkshakes again. I'll tell you that. But it'll put you off those.
Yeah.
And bowling as well, it'll put you off. But
my two favorite things. Oh no.
All in the one scene. Right, guys, it's time to say goodbye. I know it's very sad, very sad. It's time to say goodbye to Tommy. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Cool. And it's bye from me. Don't take drugs, people. Bye-bye. That's it for part 2. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 1 if you haven't done so already. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell me what your favourite films are relating to the episodes. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for X at FVF_podcast. Plus, we are now on YouTube, so hit that like button and comment there. If you do, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off. Thank you.